Here are my predictions. I am going to marginally enjoy this movie more than the book. There's a 50-50 shot that this is probably going to make me cry. Merry meet, my fellow bookish witches. Welcome to Witchy Reads, a place where we talk about books and other bookish things. Last time we were here, I did a review of the book One Day by David Nicholls, and I decided that I wanted to compare it to its adaptations. In this video, I will be talking about the 2011 film adaptation of One Day. I recently watched the film, and I have some thoughts. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, we have a completely different opening shot that introduces us to the character of Emma. She is riding her bike, and from what I know of the book, this is supposed to be mere seconds before tragedy strikes. Even getting that heads up, knowing that this is the scene, did not prepare me for the utter chaos that would soon follow. We then jump cut to July 15th, 1988, the official day that Emma and Dexter meet. They are leaving what seems to be an after party of sorts for their college graduation. Already, we're sticking pretty close to the book. The characters are all wearing caps and gowns, except for Dexter, and I'm sure this is meant to show him as a cool bro or something like that.
I'm cool.
Some character interactions occur, and yada yada yada, Emma and Dexter end up back at her apartment. This is where we encounter, I would say, big change from the book to film. Emma and Dexter do not sleep together in this first encounter.
That's fine. Maybe we could just be friends.
Okay.
There isn't anything necessarily wrong with choosing to take the story in that direction, especially if you are really wanting to play off the will they, won't they dynamic, which based on everything else, this film absolutely wants the audience to do. The issue with doing it for this story, however, is that there are future interactions between Emma and Dexter that you will have to rework to make it make sense. Do the filmmakers do this? No, they don't. The first of these interactions is when Emma and Dexter go on vacation together. In the movie, they keep the same set of rules, namely that they need to keep their distance from each other, nudity and sex-wise, so as not to ruin their friendship. Dexter essentially friend-zoning Emma in that introductory scene makes this later scene way more awkward and confusing. If you have been friends with someone for years and have not discussed what you mean to each other than friends, and you don't want to ruin the friendship that you have, creating these rules actually makes it way more awkward. I have male friends. We know we are just friends. This would never need to be said if we went on a vacation together. It is implied by the status of our relationship that we have both agreed to as adults. Anything beyond that would be pushing clearly established boundaries, and I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody like that. That's not to say that the character of Dexter wouldn't have tried something regardless, because, lest we forget, he is still a fuckboy, even in the movie. But by having Emma list out what she explicitly doesn't want, creates this weird dynamic with Dexter where he feels like he should push those boundaries with her. He's just awful. Of course, we do see him ultimately push these boundaries, and because Emma is such a weak character in contrast to his character, she doesn't really fight him off or disagree or call him out on his actions. This is then excused by having him go into this weird short monologue about how extremely sexual he is as a being. He feels
It's like I've just got out of prison all the time.
To me, that's not a legitimate excuse for pushing someone else's boundaries. Oh, I have this problem. I am a sexual being. I can't help the fact that I am going to cross these clearly established boundaries that you set in order for us to have a fun vacation. This is a red flag, and it makes the character of Dexter trash. I understand that they write the character of Emma to not really care about these rules. It's set up to be a thing where she's doing this to make it seem like she does care and wants to set those boundaries. But imagine, if you can, that these were truly her boundaries, and then he just straight up walks all over them. It's not okay. And in the real world, this friendship should have been over. The other scene that this initial friend zoning creates issue with is that later in the film, Emma and Dexter sleep together for the first time off screen. We don't even get to see it. We don't get to enjoy the sparks and the romance that come from seeing our two main love interests come together. The characters just tell us that they slept together.
But we just slept together.
I haven't forgotten.
I would imagine that sucked a lot of the romance out of the air for a lot of the audience watching this. I know that it did for me, and I don't even really care about these characters. The funny thing is, had we seen them sleep together in that introductory scene, it would have made this scene work. The fact that they occasionally meet up and wouldn't be a big deal because that's exactly what they do in the book. The assumption with this is that the filmmakers wanted to make their first time a big deal because this usually is a big deal in a romance story. But then they just have them sleep together for the first time off screen. Why? Make it make sense. The only explanation I can think of from a film perspective is that the film is rated PG-13. There is nudity, predominantly of the ass variety, from Dexter and one of his flings. I'm guessing that they used up the quota that they had for nudity, so not only is the movie seriously lacking in romance between the two leads, there is also pretty much zero intimacy between them either, which stifles what little chemistry they do have. Things are not looking good as far as my enjoyment of this film. Speaking of the characters of Emma and Dexter, I think that they are just as awful in the movie as they are in the book, with the added benefit of being extremely surface level and just bland. There really wasn't any added depth to the characters in the film. A puddle is far deeper than what these two characters brought to this story. The character of Dexter does get more screen time, but at what cost? Because he is the worst of the two. That extra screen time does nothing to give him more nuance or character development. We only ever see Dexter as a jerk. We never see him being sweet or growing up, improving as a human, which makes you wonder, what does Emma see in him anyway?
I know that you're going to be a fine man. Decent, loving, accomplished. But I don't think you're there yet. I worry that you're not very nice anymore.
Meanwhile, we only get flashes and glimpses into Emma's life. There was literally a year shown in the film where we see her jump in a pool, swim for a little bit, and then that's it. That's all we get for her for that 1 year. I guess that's all we needed to see. It really is like the movie barely cares about her, so why should the audience? And this really is a problem, especially with how this story ends. You want the audience to care about this character. And then you have Dexter, who really doesn't seem to care about Emma either until he decides that he wants to be with her. Of course, this is after his mother's death, losing his job, having a kid, marrying, and then divorcing his wife after she cheats on him with his friend. It's just a lot, and it feels like he just decides to be with Emma because she is the only constant in his life, which isn't necessarily a healthy decision to be making. The film definitely keeps up on the melodrama. That's for sure. In that same time frame where all of that shit is happening to Dexter, we see Emma as a school teacher. She breaks up with a man she did not love or care about, and then she writes a book. So her life is marginally going better. She's still not a good person. The scenes she has with her ex-boyfriend who ended up proposing to her are just absolutely cringe-inducing. You can see that they do not get along, and it's predominantly from her end because that man adores her and she treats him like trash. We also get to see Dexter get super angry when he decides to be with Emma because she is with someone else at that point. It really plays off like, since he is ready, she should be ready. She should want to be with him now because he is grown up and he is ready to be with her, and she should have waited for him. And how dare she go and find someone else when he is ready to be with her?
You've met someone.
Is that really so hard to believe?
A man.
Yes, a man, a guy.
Oh, a guy. He's a gyno, is he? I see. Is that what you mean? You're having lots of sex?
Since when do we need to ask your permission? God knows you never asked mine.
How? How do people like this character? How do people think this is a healthy romance? It's fine though, because like I have mentioned, Emma is a weak character, so she immediately dumps her boyfriend to be with Dexter. And we know it's going to be okay because she makes him promise to treat her better, that it's going to be different with her.
Lead me on or let me down or go behind my back. I will murder you. You swear?
Yeah, I swear.
Yes. He's definitely proven that he is going to treat you better than every other person he's been with by this point in the film, because we've seen all that character growth. The fact is, a romance should have the characters meet on equal ground when they are ready to come together. Not whatever this toxic nonsense is. I wouldn't say this necessarily made the film worse than the book, because the characters are exactly the same in the novel. It's bad because the source material is bad. However, I did enjoy Anne Hathaway as Emma. There were moments where she would say these quips or these fun one-liners, and I won't lie, some of them made me chuckle.
I got to know you. You cured me of you.
What rhymes with Dexter?
Prick is a half rhyme.
Calvin underpants. I'll find them. I swear to you, I shall track them down.
It's wild to me that the character of Emma got way less screen time and yet still managed to steal the show just because of Anne Hathaway's performance. Even though I love Anne Hathaway, there was one little thing that I think she wasn't the best choice for, and that is the fact that this story takes place in Britain, and she's not British. And I don't understand why they didn't pick a British actress. Anne Hathaway's British accent was fine, but there were moments where I was pretty certain that she was changing dialects.
Whenever I go to bed with someone, I always end up either laughing or weeping. And Ian, I'd love to come, but after work.
Now, I'm obviously not a professional linguist. I wasn't sure if what I was hearing was actually her changing dialects or if it was just my ear playing tricks on me, but I am happy to report that I found a review of the movie that confirmed this. It just stated that her accent was inconsistent and felt forced, which I would have to sadly agree with. Moving on to the character of Dexter, I thought Jim Sturgess was okay as the character. I thought he was going to be a little bit better, but I feel like that was more about what he was given in the source material versus his actual acting performance. I guess the character is just that terrible. Really no redeeming qualities. It's not Jim Sturgess's fault. The film chooses to really only show the bad side of Dexter. It's really only towards the end of the film, for maybe less than 10 minutes, that we get to see this charming, sweet, grown-up man. It's just not enough time to redeem the character. Jumping to the thing that I actually thought was marginally done well in the book, the time jump narrative device, which is where we essentially meet up with the characters every year on July 15th for 20 years in the book, and in the movie it is for 18 years. This movie is almost 3 hours long, even removing those extra 2 years. I think it's fine that they shortened the time frame. I think the filmmakers had a really fun time with how the text flashes across the screen every time we jump to the next year. Some of the ways that they did it were pretty clever. But other than that, the time jumps in the film don't feel very fluid. Some even felt jarring to me, because there were a lot of scenes where the characters were going through one emotion and then it hops to another emotion, and then we jump a year and then we're not having to worry about those emotions anymore. It just kind of started to feel like emotional whiplash. I do think the book does a far better job with easing the readers into that narrative device, jumping from year to year while considering all of the emotions at play. For the film, it just doesn't doesn't seem to work well. My opinion is the film didn't utilize the time that they had to really focus on the people or the characters and what they mean to each other, which is kind of the meat of the story and is what gives the romance its romance. That is why the story ends up being so bland. It was pretty clear that the film was only really interested in showing two young, gorgeous people going back and forth about being in a relationship, getting together, and then one of them dying tragically and ridiculously. It was all show, no substance, and the show was boring. I can see it almost being difficult for someone not having read the book to maybe not fully understand why the characters are so surface level. The book, while flawed, manages to fill in more about these characters. Then again, this could just be a good popcorn movie for those who haven't read the book. Who knows? Lord knows I have plenty of those. Another big flaw with the film is that so much stuff happens off screen. Now, this isn't a change that was made from book to film because the book does the same thing. We are told about certain scenes by the characters that we don't necessarily get to see in the story. Instead of reworking the timelines so we actually see it in the film, they are just told to us again by the characters. All of these things would have been great to see so we could have then seen the character development from those instances. It would have allowed us to dive deeper into the emotional impact of the story. We, the audience, get none of that. It made this supposed love story feel extremely bland. Okay, so let's talk about Emma's death. I thought I was prepared. I was very wrong. My reaction was very real and visceral. I very much went into this film thinking I was maybe going to cry a little bit. I honestly didn't think I was going to burst into laughter. I assumed it was my own warped imagination that gave me that ridiculous image of Emma's car accident. But apparently, I was pretty close to the mark. That impact of the truck slamming into Emma made me jump out of my skin. I am sorry if that hurts anyone, if anyone enjoys this book or this film. There was just no way that I wasn't going to laugh at that scene. At that point in the movie, it's about 95% done, so I knew I wasn't going to get super weepy. Though I will say there was one scene that did pull on my heart a little bit, and that was after Emma dies and Dexter comes home from going to a club and having the shit kicked out of him. His daughter sees him battered and crying on the floor. That got to me a little bit, seeing her father so broken. But then after that, we quickly time jump to the next year, and all is not fully healed, but at least a little better. Dexter and Ian have this weird interaction in Dexter's cafe where Ian says he is thankful for Dex because he was the only one who managed to make Emma light up. This really only makes sense if we had seen any kind of character growth for Dexter, anything that showed us that he is now a good man, aside from just being older and presumably too tired to carry on his regular bullshit. We then get a flashback of that day back on July 15th, 1988, where Emma and Dexter spent the day together after that night of not having sex. They go on a hike, but quickly decide to go back to Dexter's flat for some afternoon delights, where they are immediately greeted by Dexter's parents, who have arrived to visit him early. Dexter gets Emma's phone number and watches her walk away with the promise that they will see each other again. Then the movie ends, and I am just tired. I think what makes a good adaptation is when the story is reworked to fit the new medium. What do I mean by this? Readers may think they want a straight one-to-one adaptation, but more often than not, certain narrative devices don't work well in a new storytelling medium. My favorite adaptation is Stardust, and while it does follow the book pretty closely, there were things that were changed because film is a different medium, and those changes made the movie movie and in turn the story great. Another good example is every Stephen King adaptation I have ever seen. The ending is always changed, and King himself has stated that he prefers a lot of the movie endings to his stories because they work better visually and narratively for the medium of film. I think where people get confused is that these changes are never meant to take anything away from the novel. They serve as a way to improve upon the story. One Day is an example of a true one-to-one adaptation. If there were any differences, it was so slight that it didn't affect the story at all. There were obviously a few problems with doing it this way. The big one is using that main narrative device of only seeing the characters on the same day every year. Obviously, big life events don't happen on the same day every year, so we miss a lot of big events in Emma and Dexter's lives, such as Dexter's mother's death, the dissolution of his marriage, Ian proposing to Emma, Emma rejecting Ian's proposal, Emma and Dexter sleeping together for the first time, and Emma and Dexter getting married. All of these huge character moments, which would have added to the character's development, happen off screen because they happen on different days outside of July 15th. This is how the book is also written. The problem with continuing to do this in the film is that film is a visual medium. Just having the characters tell us what happened off screen multiple times throughout the movie is extremely boring. The filmmakers needed to come up with a unique, creative way to work these plots into the visuals. That is how you change an adaptation for the better. In keeping this narrative device the exact same way as the novel causes the characters to fundamentally remain the same throughout the story. We don't see these big moments that would absolutely change a person, and because of that, we don't see these characters grow when they should be. How are you going to explain a character growing when you don't see the catalyst for that change? It's why Dexter remains a jerk throughout the majority of the film until we are sad for him after we witness Emma's death. This just isn't enough. Not for a film adaptation. Whoever adapted One Day into this film didn't do a good job. Sorry. Even though I would consider One Day's film adaptation not great, I still stand firm in my belief that not all books are better than their adaptations. If I were to rate the film One Day on the same scale of the book, I would give it the exact same rating. 1.5 stars. It was not a better adaptation, nor was it a bad one. It was a straightforward, horribly boring one-to-one, shot-for-shot of the book. I will admit, I did enjoy the film better than the book, but only marginally so, and it mostly had to do with Anne Hathaway's performance, and the fact that it was over in just under 3 hours. Emma's character is severely underdeveloped in the film, even more so than in the book, and yet because it is Anne Hathaway, she manages to steal the show. I also like Jim Sturgess as Dexter, but even though he gets more screen time, his performance feels more phoned in. The character is also just bad, so he probably couldn't do much with the material that he was given. The movie isn't good, and worse still, it's just boring. So while I enjoyed my experience in watching the film more than I did in reading the book, that's not saying much. Next, we have the final comparison where I will be watching the newly released Netflix series One Day. I have heard that it is better than the book and the film, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. My predictions for the TV series are going to be relatively the same. I think I'm definitely going to like this better than the book and will most likely enjoy it better than the film. I tend to find that television adaptations are able to bring life into a story more so than a film because it has the time and space to do so. That is what I am expecting with One Day's TV series. Will I cry? I think the odds are a bit higher here, but I still think I am going to sit myself at a 50-50 shot of that happening. Unlike the film, I know absolutely nothing about this TV series, not even the names of the actors. I will admit that I was definitely wrong wrong about the chemistry between Anne Hathaway and Jim Sturgess, I think I might just find what I am looking for in the TV series between those two actors. I am going to attempt to watch the entire show in the next week. However, since watching the show will likely take more time, I will probably have other videos come out before that one. What are your thoughts on One Day the novel and the 2011 film? Do you think the film was a good adaptation? Do you think the book is better than the film? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoy my videos and would like to support my channel, the best way to do that right now is to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share any videos that you particularly like. It really is a big help and I greatly appreciate it. Until our next chapter together, merry part and blessed be.